Hello. In the past few weeks, most of the pens that I've been reviewing have been very inexpensive pens. This week we're going to do something a little bit different. This pen is not inexpensive. It's actually quite expensive. I was at the Long Island Pen Show last week, and I was able to pick up this pen. This is an Aurora 88 with a sterling silver cap. This is not a new pen, this is a used pen. I wouldn't exactly call it a vintage pen because A, it's not that old. It's probably from the 1990s, and they still make it. So I don't think you could really call a pen that you could actually still buy a new one of a vintage pen. Others may differ in opinion on that, but in any case, it is, I would just simply call it a used or pre-owned pen, if you will. But this is a beautiful, beautiful pen. It's a decent size pen. This pen tends to be classified as a larger sized pen, but it's actually, from a length perspective, it's not that long. So let's compare it to a Lamy Safari and a Pilot Metropolitan. As you can see, it's actually a little bit shorter than either of these pens. It is decently girthy, and it's got a decent amount of weight to it. It weighs 29 grams. And a lot of that weight is obviously in the cap, which is all metal and mostly sterling silver. So let's look at this. The body is black resin. It has a very traditional piston turning knob. It is a piston filled pen. It has this absolutely beautiful cap in sterling silver with gold plated trimmed accents. The cap band simply says Aurora around the cap band in a very nice, somewhat cursive script. It's got a great texture to the cap. It's sort of a linear lined pattern with a smooth gold dome. A smooth dome at the top. Not too many markings on this. In very small letters on the top of the clip band, it says Italy. There's a tiny letter M in a square right above that. I'm not sure what that means. I suspect it might be a date code. I'm not sure. Then we get to the hallmarks on the silver. It says 925, which represents 92.5% silver, which is what constitutes sterling silver. And then it's got the hallmark. This is the correct shape and format for an Italian silver hallmark. After 1968, they changed the format of the hallmark. So this is a correct format for a post-1968 Italian silver hallmark. The format of the hallmark is a star, a number, and two letters. The two letters indicate the province in Italy where the silversmith is located. In this case, TO for Torino, which is consistent as Aurora is based in Torino. And then the number 5 after the star. There is an individual code for each silversmith within each province. There are thousands of these codes. The number 5 is actually, I looked it up, is actually the code for Aurora. So the hallmark is completely consistent with what you would expect to see. The clip has got a great shape to it. It's got the ball at the end. It's got this swooping curve to it. It's just a really nice shaped pen. I think the aesthetics on this pen are just spectacular. It unscrews quite easily. So you do a little over one turn. I'd say that's about, I'm going to say that's about 1.25 turns opens the pen. The pen does post, and it posts well and posts securely and is very nicely balanced. Here we can see a really nice functional ink window, which is actually quite usable. It runs completely around. It's got nice gold toned trim around the ink window, which I think looks really nice. And then you can see the level of the ink because it's a nice big wide ink window. A lot of ink windows are these little slits that are not usable. This is. You comes down to a bunch of threads which are very unobtrusive, a nice size section which flares out, and then you get to the nib. It's a fairly ornate nib with a lot of scroll work, and very prominently in the middle it says 14K for 14 karat gold. And then the nib it's a fairly conventional shaped nib, but it does have a very nice, unusual long taper, and I think somewhat, I would say, unusually long tines. It's a very nice looking nib. It does say Aurora on the nib. You can't see it because it's actually in the part of the nib that's hidden by the section. I did buy this used at a pen show, so I wanted to make sure I could clean it well, and it's very easy. The nib unit unscrews, and then the nib and the feed come right out, and it cleans up very nicely. So I was able to examine the entire nib when I had it out for cleaning. The feed is a nice beefy sized feed that is made out of ebonite. And that is about it for the parts of this pen. I guess the next most important thing is to see how it writes, and we're going to find that out right now. Okay, what we have here is an Aurora 88, and this particular variant is what's called the Model 303, which indicates this particular size pen with the sterling silver cap. This has a 14 karat gold nib. It is unlabeled, but I would put it in the fine to medium category. I've only had this pen about a week, but I will say this has already become one of my absolute favorite pens. I have a lot of pens, but this pen just writes fantastically. It writes a nice fine line, but a wet line with a lot of nice flow to it. The flow on this is just great. Aurora nibs have a tendency or reputation for having quite a bit of feedback. I would say this does not. So I would definitely categorize this nib as being smooth. You can probably hear a little bit of feedback in the mic, but I believe that's just amplified by the recording. But it is really a beautiful, flowing, gorgeously writing pen. It's not a particularly flexy nib. There is some line variation to be had for sure, but it is it's got a bit of a spring and a bounce to it. I would not really try pushing much flex out of it beyond or line variation out of it beyond this, but it just feels so good in the hand and so good to write. And this has very quickly, in just the week that I've had this pen, become one of my absolute favorite pens to write with. And it's got a good weight to it, feels great in the hand, and has great flow, etc. So this is a great pen. It is, like I said before, it is not a cheap pen by any means, but it writes like you would expect a pen at this price point to write. Just from an example of a price point, I believe this pen new cost nearly $1,000. I see it priced anywhere between $700 or $800, upwards of $999, etc. So it's approaching the $1,000 mark. This pen new. I paid quite a bit less than that, obviously, because this is a used one. But so I think I got a pretty good deal on this. But I just love this pen. This ink is Aurora Black, just simple Aurora Black. This black is somewhat famous among the fountain pen community. A lot of people say it's their favorite black because it's just so dark. I will agree, it is very dark. Whether it's the darkest black remains to be seen. I'm going to be doing a video in the near future, which I'm going to compare every one of my black inks head to head. And I have 7 different black inks at the moment, so it should be an interesting comparison video, and obviously this Aurora Black will be one of the ones I will be including in the comparison. There's very little not to like about this Aurora Black. It is certainly very black. It flows quite well. This pen writes pretty wet, so it's hard to really say much about dry time. I mean, this is you know, still wet here, but it's in a very wet writing pen. Up here from a minute or two ago, it's actually quite dry. So you know, I think you need to experiment with different pens in terms of whether the dry time will be satisfactory or not for you. Like I said, this Aurora 88 is a nice wet writing pen, so it's really hard to say. It comes in this nice little tall square, very classic looking ink bottle. The only complaint I would have about the way this ink is packaged is it comes, when you initially buy it, with this little plastic plug stuck into the top of the bottle, which is a good thing from a shipping perspective to keep it really nice and sealed so it's not going to leak during shipping. The only problem is this is very difficult to get out without getting ink all over your hands. So I'm going to caution you, if you buy a bottle of this ink, you're going to open up the cap and you're going to see this plug in there. Be careful, because it's a tough one to get out of the bottle without getting ink all over your hands. So you've been warned. That's about all I would have to say about this particular pen and this particular ink. Great pen, great ink, and I like it a lot, and I'm definitely a fan. So, until next time, that would be goodbye. If you like this video, please, please, please subscribe. If you don't like the video, leave a comment and tell me why. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.